Hello. Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Selamat sore.
So now we're just give a couple of minutes for journalists to go to the webinar, so we can start in. Hey, just wait. Thank you so much, our media friends. We appreciate your time to join this press call here. Just wait. We have some of the attendees here. I recognize some of journalists here. There is Rini True. Hello, Rini. Hello, Petra. Hello, Penny. Okay. Just wait.
I don't have my laptop.
So before we launch this press call, maybe I will just brief some journalists. If you have a question, or you can just use the Q&A feature here, or you can just type on chat. We will pick some question to be answered by our speaker after in the Q&A session. Ibu.
I'm just testing my.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure which one better, doesn't it? Sorry, I'm making things up.
Okay. Okay, I think we can start now. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome everyone to the 2021 Ubud Writers and Readers Festival virtual press call. We are pleased to have representatives from media organizations from across Indonesia and the world, and we appreciate your support in helping to promote and celebrate literature, culture, and creative arts. I'm Tiara Mahardika from the media team, and I will be the MC for today's press call. Okay, set as a hybrid festival from 8 to 17 October, Ubud Writers and Readers Festival moved forward with the theme of drum from Balinese Hindu philosophy, Mulat Sarira, interpreted in English as self-reflection. The festival will explore self-reflection, cultural introspection, and human rights, examining who we are, what unites and divides us, and what drives our action. So before we start we also want to show you our teaser trailer here. We have a beautiful teaser trailer. Just let's watch.
The Ubud Writers and Readers Festival returns with the theme Mulat Sarira, self-reflection, which is a Balinese Hindu philosophy, a spiritual principle of examining our actions, thoughts and values to ultimately build the deepest sense of self-understanding, wisdom and interconnectedness in the pursuit of Dharma, the truth. These are not normal times, and many of us are still trying to value and evaluate the turbulence of this journey to navigate a path to calmness, comfort and clarity. The festival will delve into self-reflection and beyond, into cultural introspection, human rights, animal rights, the environment, and to examine who we are, what unites and divides us, how we coexist on this planet, how we care for our planet. We will delve into tangible and imaginary landscapes across fields, of oceans, mountains, into deserted islands, ancient temples, jungles, forests, villages, cities, Bali, our beloved home, and Ubud, a place whose name simply means obat, medicine. To which parts of normal do we wish to return, and what lessons learned will we take into the future? Join us in a festival that promises to be extraordinary, because Bali is extraordinary.
Okay, that's our beautiful teaser trailer. We hope you enjoy it as much as we do. So this is the 18th year of Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, which brings together the world's leading authors, activists, thinkers, artists, and performers to discuss big ideas and extraordinary stories. Today, we are pleased to be joined by some of our headliners of this year's festival, Mirandi Riwoe, Mark Lynas, Joshua Irwandi, and Kadek Sonia Piscayanti. Thank you so much for being with us today. In today's virtual press call, we will start by posing a question to each of our panelists. Then we will have an opportunity for a Q&A session with the audience. If you have a question, you can also write it down in our chat, or we'll pick some of the questions to be answered by our speaker. If you can also use the feature Q&A in Zoom, and if you want to have one-on-one interview with our speaker, you can also tell us on the chat or immediately contact our media team through media@ubudwritersfestival.com. Or you can also contact me at tiara@yayasansaraswati.org. Our media team will happy to help you to arrange the schedule for interview. This virtual press call will held in English, but we will facilitate the necessary translation. First, I would like to introduce you to Bapak Ketut Suwardana, co-founder of the Yayasan Mudra Swari Saraswati. Pak Ketut, in 2021, the festival celebrates its 18th year looking through the lens of Mulat Sarira, a Balinese Sanskrit phrase translation in English as self-reflection. Bapak Ketut, can you explain more about the meaning of Mulat Sarira and how it's a part of this year's festival?
Thank you. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Salam. Baik, saya akan bicara tentang tema dari Ubud Writers Readers Festival 2021 ini. Well, Mulat Sarira mean it's like we make weeping to make a very beautiful clouds, you know. Also, the same way, you know, sort of a pattern for us, like from yoga, might call it dhyana or tapa, brata, and samadhi. That's the way for people how they Mulat Sarira to have a complementation, perenungan. It's like people, you know, the same way like the weaver, how they make a beautiful clothes, a beautiful textile. Also, we can make our life beautifully through that yoga, meditation, and those kind of things. Actually, there's the time, you know, which is this pandemic, our life in Bali is going down, very sad because of the our tourist industry is so bad, and we are on the like sinking. Now, actually for us to ask ourselves, according to our sacred text from the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra said, Atato like Brahma Jinasa. Actually, the time for us now, how we have to ask ourselves, what is our mind of our life? So it's time for us now to ask. And through Mulat Sarira, we can see how deep we can see ourselves. If we can see ourselves, so we can use kind of like a mirror, to see our reflection, our daily life, our condition today, and in that way, like in our what's good, the Bhagavad Gita mentioned it, Arjuna mentioned it to Arjuna. Arjuna is your hero. Whatever is your way is my way. That's what Krishna said. What does God say to Arjuna? So if people like him and do his job, doing his duty, doing his obligation, to fight, and actually he will have no sin from what he did, what is karma, because this already mentioned it from Krishna, from God. So in this way, it will the character, how to fight through this Bhagavad Gita, like from Mulat Sarira. And also many way, like in our archipelago, it's a lot of wisdom, local wisdom, like we call it Srat or Kokawin, from Kokawin Dharma Sunya. Actually, they written by Dangyang Nirata, is a rishi from Java and came to Bali, and we call him Padano Sakti Bawarau. He used this kind of it's a beautiful expression about life, and he chose a poetic word, how to express, to build kind of energy, or how to people themselves, people, and then like he expressed like how a lot of people go to the big mountain, and then so actually he will find himself in the big mountain, because the mountain is not far from himself. This kind of word, the beautiful word that Mark Nirarta said to how to Mulat Sarira. Also through meditation, yoga, and because yoga, the word came from youth to make the unity. And through practice yoga, people can become in Java call it manunggal in Kuala Gusti, or to absorb with the Atman, with the Paramatman, to become once with God through the meditation and yoga. And that's kind of a wisdom, or the spiritual way how to Mulat Sarira. And, you know, like, it's when the Dutch here is one of the first king against the Dutch in Batavia at the time, you know, like 16th century. Actually, the Sultan Agung is name, and he used that kind of faith, you know, like Mulat Sarira, you know, how to build his energy or power to against the POC or Dutch at that time. And he's aware about the condition, about people around Indonesia at the time, Nusantara at the time, and also he feel like he owned this archipelago, and then he aware, and then he fight, you know, with his heroic to fight the Dutch. That's kind of he got that kind of energy, he got that kind of knowledge from Mulat Sarira. And that's is learned from what they call it Tri Bata or Tri Dharma. Yeah, that Ipan is a Muslim, yeah, Sultan Agung, yeah, but he still follow that wisdom, you know, from the previous time. Now we know, you know, COVID raised a lot of damage, you know, in social problem with you know, multi-dimension. I think the theme, you know, Ubud writer today, you know, Mulat Sarira, is very appropriate. So we can use and we can discuss and we can what you call it, sharing our life, you know, between other people, you know, in this country, Indonesia, or with people with other come from other wisdom. How can we make a benefit from this festival with the theme of Mulat Sarira? I think that's I can say it for this time. Thank you.
Matur suksma Pak Ketut. Okay. And now I would like to introduce Ibu Janet DeNeefe, the founder and director of Ubud Writers and Readers Festival. This year, UWRF moved forward as and is set as a hybrid festival, combining offline and online experience for its audience. In this, Ibu Janet, in this new normal era, where there's still social distancing applied, how do you stay committed to revive and keep the spirit of organizing festival? Please, Ibu Janet.
Thank you, Tiara.
Yeah.
I guess it's sort of a issue that my husband just mentioned, the fact that, we have a purpose, you know. As you know, the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival began after the first Bali bombings, and it was an attempt to reflower the community, to uplift the people, to boost the economy, to bring a bit of inspiration, create a platform for dialogue. So that was how we began. And so I see now more than ever, we have to continue that, because this is what the people need right now. Some sort of event. You can see, like with the semi-lockdown, there's not a lot of action on the streets here. So our job is to create the best festival we can, given the situation. And so from being a hybrid festival, we're not just online. Last year we were online. Now this year we've combined online and on the ground, and also over both weekends we will hold the artisan market, which is also something that we started to help young Indonesians to pivot their career, you know, with so many people out of work from, you know, hospitality industries. Now they have an, you know, the option to start some sort of small business. And of course, you know, Bali is like creative city, you know, everybody's an artisan in a way. People here are very creative. So, and literature is a part of that creative arts. So we've, again, done the best we can. It's all a learning experience. And of course, some of the aspects that we have learned about the online festival, we will take into the festival next year. You know, we're sort of slowly morphing into a modern era. We can still communicate and we can still, watch each other on the screen. And we're bringing in sessions where you can all be around each other. We're just following COVID protocol, but we're sort of like in stage 2 of the pandemic and kind of welcoming a whole new world as we sort of see, maybe start to see what's ahead of us for next year. But of course it has its challenges, but it's made us think outside the box and be a little bit braver perhaps and venture into a whole new territory. So, but our job is to stay alive and to keep on going. And we stay motivated because we know that our job is to look after the community, look after the Indonesians, especially young Indonesians. So we have a big job to do.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Janet. And next, I'm very pleased to introduce freelance documentary photographer Joshua Irwandi. This year, Joshua has been awarded the National Geographic Society Storytelling Grant, World Press Photo Award in General News, and selected as a finalist of the Pulitzer Prize in Breaking News Photography. His award-winning photograph, The Human Cost of COVID-19, get the world's attention and led him to be titled as the photographer who defined the pandemic. So, Joshua, what do you want to convey through your photography?
All right. Thank you, Tiara. It's an honor to be here at the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival. Actually, I first heard of the festival when I wanted to become a writer when I was in high school. So when Janet contacted me, then of course I accepted straight away. Through my photography, my motivation as a documentarian is based on creating memories in every given photographic opportunity. I believe by creating history and perspectives, they provide us with reasons for change. We are given an opportunity to reconsider the human condition and the state of the world that we live in. Indeed, one of my images that caught attention was the human cost of COVID-19, which sparked violent reactions across social media last year after I first posted it on Instagram. My decision to post was simply to highlight the struggle of the medical force, to warn and to let people know what the consequences might be if we ignore the health protocols. I wanted people to know what the reality was after months and months of statistics. We have the right to know. To my surprise, celebrities and government officials doubted the legitimacy of the image. I was accused of setting up the photo to spread fear. Many thought I brought studio lights to photograph the body, and many thought it was a mannequin inside. I received violent direct messages, racial abuse, and comments across social media when it happened. I was called a slave of WHO or agents of the Jews. They say if the photographer is still alive, this is all pure business. The direct results of not taking coronavirus more seriously is evident in the months of June and July this year, when Indonesia became the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in Asia. It is heartbreaking to say that we saw this coming. It is even more heartbreaking that everything I saw this year in the hospitals were a repeat from last year. Although circumstances were a little different, I made similar images. The only difference, we see the evidence in the cemeteries. I visited the Rorotan Cemetery in Cilincing, North Jakarta. You see rows and rows of graves with the dates of deaths so recent. They happen in quick succession, perhaps 1 or 2 or 3 days before I came visit. A few days ago, these people were still alive. On the background, the grounds were being flattened with heavy machinery to make way for new graves as ambulances line up to deliver the bodies with only a handful of family members attending. I came back the following week and they filled more rows of graves. One walks out of that cemetery unfailingly broken in pieces. We couldn't help but wonder, where are the influencers and the policymakers who ridiculed visual journalists when the country's medical system broke down, with 2,032 medical workers dead now in Indonesia? Can we hold them accountable for tainting information that were served to inform and warn about the dangers of the virus? All of us are paying the price now. All of us are grieving now. In this age where it seems impossible to convince anyone of facts, we are desperate to have someone to be there to see and to record what is happening. Responsible visual journalism proves to be one of our most reliable sources of information during the pandemic, even if it means a great personal and professional cost to us sometimes. I wish a successful Ubud Writers and Readers Festival this year, and I look forward to continue this conversation with Rio Helmi and Mayang Austin Sophie later in the week. Thank you. Stay safe and stay well.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Joshua. It's so, yeah, the photograph is so viral and get many attention. And okay, before we go to the next speaker, I want to remind the journalists here to drop the question through our chat and also the Q&A feature. We will pick your question later after this session. Okay, and so my next question then is for Mirandi Riwoe, the author of Stone Sky Gold Mountain, which won the Queensland Literary Award for Fiction 2020 and the ARA Historical Novel Prize 2020. Set during the Gold Rush era in Australia, the book is a heartbreaking and universal story about the exile and displaced, about those who encounter discrimination yet yearn for acceptance. Mirandi, how can fiction reflect question about identity and belonging? Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. So I was thinking about this in relation to my writing or Stone Sky, and I was thinking how I often like to write about people who have been exiled from, say, fiction or literature or even history, and a lot of times those people are either the culturally diverse or even women. So I guess through my fiction, which somehow has turned into a lot of historical fiction, I've tried to maybe go back and do some rewriting of what we might think happened or how it happened, and I think sometimes in that process, through research and through rewriting it and maybe coming from another perspective, I can bring those stories something closer to the truth, just from looking at it from a different point of view, which is, I guess, as a person of a different cultural background and female, and from a different class, all that sort of thing. So when I wrote Stone Sky, before that I'd already looked into Asian, I guess, characters for some crime fictions I wrote set in Victorian London. And I was really excited because I could make my protagonist Eurasian, because I am Eurasian, and that was something that I could write about that isn't written about a lot, from the perspective of Eurasians, especially when I was growing up. So that was exciting. But also what I wanted to do was take that notion of the sinister Oriental that was so prevalent, like in Dickens or Fu Manchu kind of novels, and sort of turn that on its head by just showing like real Asian characters doing just things that weren't sort of made up in fiction. So when I wanted to write about the Chinese here in Australia, it took me back to, so it sort of came from my own interests, you know, because I'm part Chinese, but also, you know, I'm always been interested in meeting people who are from Eurasian backgrounds here, but going back to like the 1860s, because of course, a lot of our history in Australia has been under the White Australia policy. So there weren't many, for many years, there weren't many people who were outside sort of European culture. So I wanted to write about the Chinese, but a couple of individuals, because I think it's, instead of looking at it as this Chinese horde, which is the way we look at the Chinese in the gold rush, and with a certain bit of discrimination, I wanted to concentrate on a couple of individuals. And I think that's where fiction can really help explain the motivations, I guess, and of individuals and why they came here, and not as this sort of huge horde that was threatening in other ways. And of course, that sort of rhetoric about how the Chinese were then is repeated a lot in the media now. So I like to also look at things that are still happening, like the racism or say violence against women in my novels are still speaking to issues that are happening now. So I think that's also
their views and their appreciation of literature and the arts generally. As Chia kindly mentioned, I've written a new book about climate change. I happen to have one right next to me, which is an update of the 2007 book I did, which was called 6 Degrees. And it's using exactly the same format, but it's got all of the latest science in. So it's a bit like an IPCC report, which also get updated every 7 years, except it's taken me slightly longer because I've had to do the whole thing by myself. But in essence, it's the same kind of work where I went through literally thousands of scientific papers on the impacts of climate change, both current and projected, and slotted them into a spreadsheet actually to arrange what impacts happen at what degree temperature rise, and then wrote these up into chapters with, you know, some level of artistic kind of imagination to make the whole thing readable and to make it work as a narrative. I'd be interested to know whether people think it's successful or not. But, you know, I see my job as a writer to communicate the science to a general audience in a way which people actually find entertaining as much as anything. Because, you know, we all know, I mean, this is our bread and butter, that the way that we as humans assimilate information or share information is via stories most effectively. And so my job really was just to tell stories of what happens at each degree rise in temperature, and how these affect not just the planet as a sort of huge abstract entity, but individual people in individual places at actual times. And so one of the things that most struck me was that we are living now in the first chapter of my last book. At that point, 1 degree, we're still looking into the future. Now we're living in a 1 degree warmer world. And soon going to be 1.5 degrees if we miss the Paris target, and we're still heading up to 2 degrees, and at current calculations heading up to 3 degrees if we put together all of the government commitments that have been made to reduce carbon emissions. And if carbon emissions continue to rise, then we're still potentially heading up to more catastrophic outcomes of 3 degrees plus. Fortunately, I think the total civilizational collapse of the higher levels of climate warming is becoming less and less likely. In some ways, there are causes for optimism, at least in terms of what governments say they're going to do. Most of the major economies now have net zero targets for the middle of the century or so, which is sufficient, if those targets are kept to vastly reduce the chances of us going into accelerated runaway high levels of warming, 3 degrees plus. So I think it's important to hold our government's feet to the fire and say, ensure that their short-term and their middle-term activities and policies actually fit with these net zero targets, because 2050 is still a long way away. And it's very easy to say, well, we're going to do something in 2050 and then carry on with business as usual in 2021 and 2022. So it's the near term that we've all got to focus on, because that's the reality that we're all living in. But the other good news, I think, is that the clean energy technologies that we'll need to replace the carbon age without, going back to the Stone Age, as it were, all exist. We can, probably with the exception of aviation, actually, there's no easy and obvious substitute for running aircraft in a zero carbon way still, although there's various things in development. But in terms of electricity generation and transport, surface transport, running cars, electric cars and stuff, it's now possible to basically substitute all of the carbon-based forms of energy that we have been using for the last century with zero carbon forms. And that's the challenge that I think faces the international community, and making this transition happen much more quickly than it would if you just left it to the market or to the choices of individual consumers. So the book, if you like, is kind of a cautionary tale of where we would end up if we didn't pursue aggressive efforts to reduce carbon reductions. And of course, this is an apt time to have this conversation, because by the end of this month, there will be the opening of COP26 in Glasgow, which is as I'm sure you all know, the annual UN gathering where all of the governments come together and discuss and negotiate about how to meet the targets that were agreed in Paris back in 2015. So there's a lot of different aspects to that. My particular interest is in working with former President Nasheed of the Maldives, who's current Speaker of the Maldives Parliament and also ambassador on behalf of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, which is 48 of the world's most climate vulnerable countries, so the small island states, many African countries in South and East Asia as well, which are very much on the front lines of the climate emergency. And so their ask for Glasgow is that we come out with a climate emergency pact, so a complete change from business as usual in these UN COP conferences, and something which actually addresses the gravity of the climate crisis that we face, and still retains the possibility and hopefully the probability of meeting the 1.5 degree target. So as a writer, it's a strange position to be in. We're mostly accustomed to sort of sitting behind our desks or going out and doing research, but it's a fairly solitary endeavor. But now I'm working with a former president, a bunch of governments, trying to ensure that the scenarios that I've painted in my final warning book hopefully don't come true for future generations. So it's a privilege, if you like, to be able to actually engage in the real world in some of the work that I've been writing about from behind my desk at home, which I'm not sure if that's a usual position for writers to be in or not, but it's quite a challenge to do both those things.
So much, Mark. Thank you so much. That's a new whole perspective. Okay, next, I would like to introduce Balinese author Kadek Sonia Piscayanti. She is a lecturer in literature and founder of the Mahima Community and Mahima Institute Indonesia, an educational and cultural institution in North Bali. She has been a frequent speaker for UWRF, and this year she is also one of the curators of the Emerging Writers Writing Competition, one of the UWRF initiatives to find potential young Indonesian literary stars that has been held every year since 2008. Ibu Sonia, what do you think about the literary ecosystem in Bali today?
Thank you very much, Tiara, for the question. So yes, I'm frequently invited in Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, and this year I'm one of the curators in curating the emerging writers writing. And I can see the variety of richness in their works, in the theme of locality, and then the novelty of the theme that they develop, and the creativity of language that they build within their works. It's amazing that we receive around 600 writings, and they are all new and creative works. Yeah. And also talking about literary ecosystem, seen from the what is it? From the enthusiasm that the writers sent 600 works, yeah, we can see that the ecosystem is very good, especially in Bali, because I can think that they write mindfully and deeply in the pandemic, yeah, that they cannot go anywhere, they cannot go outside, so they have more time to write mindfully and peacefully. Yeah. So, and I think this is a very good ecosystem growing in Bali, because I also manage a literary community in North Bali, Singaraja. And I can see that the enthusiasm of young writers to write in literature is growing very good. And this is also helped by the technology, as well as new literacies coming, yeah, with the social media, and they are able to share their works in the form of online, yeah, in the form of online writing that they can share. This helps the growth of literary ecosystem in Bali. So yeah, although this is a pandemic, but in terms of the writing, I think they are better and better. Okay, Tiara.
Thank you so much, Ibu Sonia. Terima kasih. So now we are going to the Q&A session with the audience. For journalists, I see some of you already drop your question through the Q&A feature and also chat. But first, I want to give you a chance for anyone who want to speak directly to our speaker. Maybe you can raise your hand to have like a direct question in this panel. If anyone here want to ask a question? Okay. Or maybe we can start with the question that already dropped in our panel, our Q&A session. This is from Muhammad Cohen. Maybe this question is for Ibu Janet. Okay. Ibu Janet, just one question. What are some of the particular challenges of putting on the festival this year, including the Australian and Indonesian location and the hybrid nature of the events as both live and online?
I suppose the biggest challenge is because we're doing actually last year was really mainly online, so in a way that's easier. So this year, in order to offer the community more of an interactive experience, we chose on the ground and online. So it makes it creates a bigger workload for the team. I guess the downside of being online is you don't get the interaction or the sort of networking or the friendships that develop between writers, both national and international. Of course, you don't get the Australian writers being here, connecting with the Indonesian writers, and likewise other parts of the world. I guess too, on another level, it can be a bit harder in a way to entice writers to be in our program, because we don't have the sort of financial cash flow that other festivals might have. So it means that suddenly you're the same as any other festival, because part of the Ubud Festival's attraction is the sheer fact that it's in Ubud. So you're already in this beautiful location with these really warm, friendly, hospitable people, great food, great weather. We have so many wonderful aspects of Ubud that attract people. So suddenly when you're online, you lose the very magic of the festival in a way. So that can be a bit of a problem too, or just an issue that we have to deal with. And also because we love showing Ubud around too. So yeah, and I guess, of course, the technical issues, making sure, you know, the connections are great, all those sorts of things. The other thing also is the time difference with different writers. You know, if they're, for example, in North America, it's like 12 hours apart. So just, again, doing the pre-records, making sure everybody's in a convenient time slot. I guess, yeah, they're the main issues, and just having to move with new technology and relying more strongly than ever on marketing and social media. You know, these things, you know, you have to speak, as I said before, all the time in order to create the best product that we can. But yeah, it certainly had its challenges, and we're all kind of looking forward to going back on the ground. Yeah. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Janet. I guess that so there is also a question for Mark Lynas here. Let me you talk about how your job as a writer is to communicate the climate in a way that people can find entertaining. In that way, do you think that creativity and storytelling can go beyond informing people, but actually encourage people to take action to fight climate change?
Yes, absolutely, and that's pretty much the subject of my final chapter and all of the advocacy work that I do, both around the book and on the issue in general. So it's one of those issues that it's not like I wouldn't say that it's an issue which is only worthwhile reading about if you're prepared to engage with it. And of course, it's an issue which affects all of us as citizens of planet Earth. But how people do that and how you encourage people to do that as a writer is, of course, the most important question. And what I don't do is try and make people feel guilty about their lifestyles, and in a way which is likely to kind of disengage people, because no one wants to be made to feel guilty. Certainly not in a book. It's not something that people just want to engage with and read about. So for me, the most important thing, I think, is to ask people to engage politically in whatever way makes sense to them. But ultimately, this is a problem which isn't solved by individuals at a on an atomized level, but collectively by governments and also internationally as well. In some ways, it's similar to the COVID issue, that you couldn't just ask people individually to somehow focus a response to a global pandemic. It had to be something which is agreed collectively, whether it's lockdowns or mask wearing, or ultimately the development of a vaccine program, which is then pursued as a kind of global public good. And the same really goes for replacing fossil fuels in our economy. It's not something that any of us can do as individuals, although we can make a contribution. So the most important thing that you do is to ensure that your governments have a realistic and radical policy to addressing carbon emissions and ultimately reaching net zero within the shortest timescale possible. And you have to do that, I think, primarily as a voter and as an politically active citizen. So for me, that's the most important thing. It's also critically important that younger people engage with this issue and make their voices heard, as well as people from all different cultures and all different backgrounds. So often in this situation, it's like the voices from the global north, the most powerful countries, the former colonial countries who dominate the discussion. And that's one of the reasons why I'm keen to work with the developing countries and the most climate vulnerable countries, because they're the ones who are suffering the worst impacts of climate damages, but have done least to cause the problem. So like I say, it's important that we remember the issue of justice in there, and achieving climate justice means engaging all of the world's people on an equal basis, and that means all of us have to participate.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Okay, apparently Ibu Janet and Pak Ketut need to go for gala opening, preparation because we have gala opening after this at 6 p.m. Bali time. So, but we still have some question here, so it's okay if Ibu Janet and Pak Ketut leave the Zoom right now. Yeah. Okay. And also, we'll continue to the other question. This is for Mirandi. Okay. How do you feel about joining UWRF 21 as a speaker? Like this is your second time joining us.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just always grateful to be invited. I love this festival. Actually, for many years, even before I was, well, when I was trying to be a writer and before I was published, I came here most years with either my mum or my aunt and uncle and my mum. So it has a special place in my heart. Yeah, and my father's also from Indonesia. So so we love going to Indonesia. It's been very hard the last 18 months not being able to visit family there. And the last time when I was there, a couple of years ago, he came along as well. And then my uncle and aunt came over from Java and we had a ball, just sort of traveling around and eating everything we could. So, and the Ubud Writers Festival itself is always has such a great, rich, lot of writers there from overseas and local, and and then there's all the poetry and the dancing. I mean, the whole festival is just so beautiful and wonderful to be part of. So I am always very grateful to be a part of the Ubud Writers Festival. But also, Tiara, I'm sorry. I also have to interview another author in 15 minutes. So I also have to go. I'm so sorry. But thank you for having me this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was lovely meeting you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye. And we still have some questions for our other speaker, Ibu Sonia and Mas Joshua here through chat. So what, Joshua Irwandi, what makes you love photography? Like the most exciting part of the photography?
I mean, and then that's such a big question, and then like I wish I could. I mean, but in short, I think it's just for me. It's just about putting visually, what is happening in the world, the reality that we are living through. I'll be honest. Like I'm a Chinese Indonesian. I'm raised in a conservative Roman Catholic family. I think living in Indonesia. I have been directly affected and shaped by the tribulations of our society here. This is a country with layers of doctrines and taboos and prejudice. And sometimes these set of norms have gone unchallenged and preserved, I suppose, for the benefits of certain groups. And a lot of the time, this condition allows injustice and censorship to take place. And yeah, I mean, as an ethnic and religious minority, we tend to stay silent, intimidated by all-around threats, if you like. But seeing all this unfold, I'm only compelled to challenge the status quo. And I think photography is the medium to answer that. So, like in my practice, I believe that the camera is an investigative tool to collect pieces of evidence with archives, artifacts, and research, in order to amplify the voices and impact of a story. I think that's the power of the power of photography. Just to kind of drive social change. I mean, I've been listening to Mark Lynas speaking earlier, and of course, like it's crucial. Even now that with climate change, then that we need visual. We actually need visuals to kind of show how these changes are happening around us. I think like that power of photography to show the reality, you know, to people. I think that's like what draws me into it, and yeah.
Thank you, Mas Joshua. So let me check our Q&A here. So,
somebody asked what percentage of the festival is online. Actually, I'd be interested to hear as well, maybe from Janet, about how exactly how this is organized, because I'm keen to learn from how a successful hybrid event works.
okay, so actually we are hybrid festivals, and we combine online and offline experience. So we have some stage here in Ubud, so the audience can speak with the speaker in a real time. So yeah, in a real time, even though the speaker is in USA, we have a lot of speakers from USA this year, and also asking question can be done directly, but we also have like online. So yeah, Ibu Janet already said that there is some session is a pre-record session. So
yeah, my session was pre-recorded, which means we can't do Q&A obviously, but I think the time zones are so different, and also the technical things. You know, if your line goes down halfway through a live session and the audience is just sitting there, so you know, there's always these challenges as well.
Yeah. So the Q&A session is a set after the panel, and it's so this 8 to 10 October we also stream not only in Ubud, we also stream in Perth. So we have two big stage here in Ubud and in Perth. So the audience in Perth can also ask questions to the speaker. One of the session that going live in Ubud and Perth is Media and Memoir. It's Julia Baird and Desi Anwar. That's good. Okay, I think. Okay, some stage. That's all. There is one question for Ibu Sonia here. When can someone be considered as a writer, in your opinion?
Well, thank you for the question. I think someone is considered to be a writer is when they can produce a writing that can give impact to the society. So everyone can write actually, but the kind of writing that can move people, that can educate people, that can inspire people, and then writing that can change somehow the society is considered to be a good writing and a good writer. Yes, I think
Sonia.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's bring the formal component of our press call to a close. That's the last question. For the question that hasn't been answered, I will ask the speaker directly and forward the answer to you, to the journalist. Okay, once again.
Well, that's the danger of doing live events.
Okay, Tiara, I think it's freezing. Okay.
Anyone else want to say goodbye? Sign us all off?
I think. Okay, goodbye.
Okay. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. This is technical.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Mhm.